Hello again. Someone online asked me to do another tutorial about keyframes. So this is just going to be a brief introduction to keyframes and also sound in Butterfly Inchworm Animation 2. If you look here at the timeline, I've got a layer on top here with two cells in it. The first cell says this is how to do, and then on the second cell I've written keyframes and sound. If we play the animation like it is, you just get a flipping back and forth between those two cells at 30 frames a second, which is not really what we want. So I'm going to stop it and then go back to frame 0, and now we're going to use this plus menu down here to add a keyframe. So this is the keyframe selection screen, and over on the left you see the type of keyframe that you can choose, and we're going to choose a hold keyframe. Now the hold keyframe lets you choose to just hold on one cell on a layer. And here we've got 0 and 1. We can choose between the two cells in our layer. And I'm going to choose cell 0. Press OK. And now we see this little red mark. That means that there's a hold keyframe at frame 0. So if we play the animation, it doesn't change. It just only shows that first cell. So let's add a second keyframe. Let's go, say, to frame 20. And we're going to hit plus, add keyframe, and this time we're going to have a hold keyframe, but we're going to select cell 1. So now you can see that if we go back to frame 0 and hit play, at first it shows the first cell, and then when it hits that keyframe it switches to the second cell. So this is how you can hold on one particular drawing for as long as you like, and you just place a new keyframe in the timeline when you want to switch to a different frame. Now let's take a look at a different kind of keyframe. I'm going to turn off the first layer and turn on my second layer here called ball. If we go back to frame 0, you can see that I've drawn about 10 different cells of a bouncing ball. If I just play the animation, it loops over and over again at 30 frames a second. Now what I want to do is use keyframes to change that behavior. I'm going to hit plus, add keyframe, and now we're going to use a play keyframe. And that just means play all the cells in the layer. But we can choose which cell we want to start on, and then you can also choose the rate. So if your animations are going too fast, you want to do one of these keyframes and just change the rate. You can slow it way down to 1 frame a second, or you can make it 5, 10, whatever you want. So let's say 12 frames a second. So here we see it looping over and over again at 12 frames a second. The other thing we're going to do is check back and forth. And this causes it to reverse direction once it hits the last cell. So now if I play my animation, you can see it play and then go back. So that's just a brief introduction to how to use keyframes. Finally, let's check out sounds. I'm going to select my soundtrack, and then we use the same menu, but with the soundtrack, what the plus menu does is add sound effects. So let's tap the name of the sound down here. We don't want this bird call sound. Here we get the categories of sounds that are built in. Up at the top, you have recordings and SFXR. These are sounds that you record yourself using the sound section. We're not going to look at that right now. We're just going to use some of the built-in sounds. So let's see, think comical, and then over here we have the actual sounds that you can play. And I'm going to use this rubber band sound. Now, I can also change the pitch of the sound if I want. So let's use a lower pitch. And now I'm just going to go, and wherever the ball hits the ground, I'm going to add a sound effect. Plus, add sound keyframe. And I'm going to go back to 0 and add sound keyframe. And there you have it. That's a simple introduction to using keyframes and sounds in Butterfly Inchworm Animation 2.